In this video, I'll be mind mapping the electron transport chain and combining it with chemiosmosis to show the process of oxidative phosphorylation. The electron transport chain is a key step in cellular respiration, and it takes place after glycolysis and the citric acid cycle. It is the most important step because it produces the most amount of ATP. The electron transport chain, along with chemiosmosis, builds up the foundation of what is called oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation, like the citric acid cycle before it, takes place inside of the mitochondria. The mitochondria is often referred to as the powerhouse of the cell, and the electron transport chain, along with oxidative phosphorylation, is the main reason why it's given that name. The electron transport chain begins with NADH produced from the citric acid cycle and uses 4 protein complexes along with ATP synthase in order to produce ATP. Let's look at where inside of the mitochondria oxidative phosphorylation takes place. This is a rough look at the mitochondria, and it shows its 2 separate membranes. Unlike the citric acid cycle, which takes place inside of the matrix of the organelle, oxidative phosphorylation occurs between both the outer membrane and the inner membrane. Throughout the entirety of the inner mitochondrial membrane, you can find the 4 protein complexes along with ATP synthase. Let's have a look at what the inner mitochondrial membrane looks like. This is a rough look at the mitochondrial membrane. As you can see, there's the 4 protein complexes along with ATP synthase. Oxidative phosphorylation begins when NADH, produced in the citric acid cycle, turns into NAD+. It also produces an H+ ion along with 2 electrons. The electrons from NADH will move through complex 1 and end up in ubiquinone. This is a mobile electron carrier, and it transfers the electrons from complex 1 to complex 3. When moving electrons from complex 3 to complex 4, it requires another mobile electron carrier. This one is called cytochrome C. Cytochrome C is a surface protein that gets oxidized by complex 4. This is the electron's final destination, as after they exit complex 4, they are finished with the electron transport chain. To clear up these extra electrons, an important reaction has to occur. The formula for this reaction is 1/2 O2 plus 2 H+ ions plus the 2 electrons from the electron transport chain. This gives a product of H2O, which is another product found in oxidative phosphorylation. While the electron transport chain is happening, H+ ions, also known as protons, move through the 4 protein complexes. This process builds up a proton gradient, where there's more H+ ions on the inner membrane space as opposed to the mitochondrial matrix. The H+ ions do not like being in a high density area, so they want to diffuse back into the low density area. This is where ATP synthase comes into play. The movement of H+ ions down through ATP synthase is the beginning of what is known as chemiosmosis. When the H+ ion moves down through ATP synthase, it smashes together ADP with a phosphate. This creates ATP, which is the final product that this whole process has been trying to produce. Let's have a closer look at chemiosmosis and how ATP synthase works. You can think of ATP synthase as a water wheel, where the water is the H+ ions and they flow on the wheel, which is ATP synthase. The H+ ions turn the top part of the ATP synthase along with the axle, which in turn starts the chemical reaction that occurs in the bottom part of ATP synthase. This is the last step of chemiosmosis, but it is the most important step where the ATP is created. This is a look at the bottom portion of ATP synthase. This is where ADP and phosphate meet, creating ATP. While the H+ ions on top move the axle, it spins inside of the lower region, allowing for ADP and phosphate to enter. 1 ATP molecule is made for every 3 H+ ions that spins the ATP synthase wheel. In conclusion, the electron transport chain is a key part of oxidative phosphorylation, which is the most important step of cellular respiration. The goal of cellular respiration is to break down sugars and to turn them into energy. This requires multiple different steps, oxidative phosphorylation being the step that yields the most amount of ATP. This cannot be done without the electron transport chain, which is one of the most important steps of the whole process. Through the use of 4 different protein complexes along with ATP synthase, The electron transport chain, along with chemiosmosis, create the conditions just right for the production of ATP. After oxidative phosphorylation, the newly created ATP molecules will be used to power different processes around the cell.